Everyone. My name is Liku Amadi, award-winning attorney and founder of Anasa Law Firm, where I work with online coaches, consultants, and expert service providers to help them establish a solid legal foundation for business. Anything that I say in this live is not considered legal advice. It is legal information for educational purposes only. If you need legal advice, you can go ahead and sign an engagement agreement with me or another attorney to get that one-on-one advice that you need. So let's get into today's topic. So just to give you a little bit of background as to why I brought this up, I've had a few conversations. The first one being maybe a week and a half ago, where a friend of mine had some work done and questioned whether they own the intellectual property. And from there, I was like, I'm gonna do a live about this, right? Because people need to know this, especially if we're in business for ourselves. So that was the first spark, and then the second spark was one of the participants in the legal business essentials beta program also asked about this. And to give a little bit of context, I am creating a holistic resource for coaches, consultants, and expert service providers to have the things they need to establish a solid legal foundation for business. So the beta participants are currently testing contract templates. They're able to ask questions and request certain resources. And so this was a question/request for resource about intellectual property transfer and owning rights and whatnot, right? Number two. Number three, had a conversation this week just about owning IP and licensing. And then number four, earlier today, I had a conversation with a cousin of mine on the East Coast who is working on a project, and someone agreed to do some work for them for free, and they're creating video content for them. And we'll get into that as an example a little more, but the implications around, doing free work, and just because that person didn't get paid, and the rights and whatnot, like that just sparked the fire in me. I was like, you know what? Okay, we really need to talk about this, because when people don't understand not just their rights, but what they can and can't do, what something means, like it can really be detrimental to your future goals, right? Your business, your plans, the foundation, your protection, your intellectual property, your ability to make money. And so with this last example, for the person who is having video content done, this is someone close to me. So I got really frustrated about it from a place of just like, yo, like I really need you to know this, and this is how we need to go about fixing it, because these specific things can happen in the future, and then this person might do that, and then this may be a situation that you definitely don't want to be in, or a fight that you can't win, right? If that person is not cooperative. So we always want to be in a position where we can win or be able to leverage when it comes to our intellectual property. So background, because here we're talking about copyrights, right? And we're talking about things that are created for us and who owns that intellectual property. Specifically, and let me be clear and just back up. And I'm talking about when you hire people like as contractors, right? I'm not talking about employees, the employee-employer relationship. When it comes to copyright protection and, work made for hire, not usually, but if an employer hires an employee to create something, right? If you're an employee of a company and you're creating things, let's say it's a marketing agency and you're an employee in the graphic design department and you are designing logos, right? Like that automatically belongs to your employer, right? Because they're asking you to do these things. So they're automatically the author, if you will, or the owner of that intellectual property. What I'm talking about in this live is not the employer and employee relationship, to be clear. Again, I'm talking about like if you as a business owner hire a contractor, for a quick logo design job, or excuse me, to design your Instagram carousel templates, or slideshow presentation graphics, or if you hire a photographer for a photo shoot or a video shoot, if you're recording certain content or a master class, etc., right? When you are putting together, creating this intellectual property for someone else, but you're not an employee, what happens? Who owns it, right? What is the relationship dynamic? What rights do you have? And so, again, I want us to understand that there are certain rules in place. And when we know these rules and we understand these rules, we can leverage them and apply them in order to not only get what we need, but get more than what we thought we needed, and just realize the doors and opportunities that are open to us. So excuse me, I'm going to give some examples to put this all into context, because I think illustrating it just makes it easier to understand, right? Like, you might understand the concept, like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But to be able to visualize it is something different. So let's go ahead and get into it. So when you hire a contractor, again, for example, photographer, videographer, graphic design person, right, to create something for you, by default, it is that person's creation, right? They're the owner, they're the author. That's generally how it works. You yourself, when you create something and put it in a tangible medium, right? It comes out of your head, goes onto paper, you put it into some tangible form, it becomes your copyright, your intellectual property. So, same thing for these other individuals that I'm giving examples about. When a person who becomes that person's client, right? If you as a client are hiring someone to do something, if you as a client want to own that, it needs to be said in the contract. It needs to be specified in the contract that that person is transferring, that person, that creator, let's use a photographer, for example, is transferring all the rights and ownership in those photos, those edited photos that they've created for you, those raw photos, whatever it is, to you, right? They're transferring that ownership to you. So it has to be specified, number one. Number two, when it is clear who owns it, right? Whether it's them, whether it's you, whether it's both of y'all, right? Just depending on the type of situation you have going on, what you hired them for. Maybe it's, a smaller part of a collaboration, whatever it's for. The contract also needs to specify what use, right? So what use there is when it comes to that intellectual property. So when those rights are transferred to you in full, ideally, let's say again for a photographer, so I'll use my wedding as an example, right? Got our wedding photos back, had the photographer, do their thing. Like, we want to own those 100%. Like, we're not trying to share the rights to our wedding photos. Like, we want to be able to, make copies, blow them up, edit as needed, share with our friends, online, etc. Right? We want to own those outright. And in that agreement, it can also state what the photographer, right, or the creator of the intellectual property can do. And so common uses, as all of you have probably seen with photographers that you've worked with, or anyone that's created something for you, is them using what they've created for you as an example, right? As an example of the work that they do for like testimonials, for advertisement purposes, putting them on their website or on their social media pages, right? Sharing it with the public. And so this is a right that they have from the contract. If you make it so, right? That's something that you can specify, but you do need to specify when someone owns it, like, what are the permissions for other people, for that person to use it, if they can use it at all, right? What are the parameters? Are there dates, or like, a timeline in which they can use it? Like, okay, you can use our stuff to, promo on your website and use it as an example, but only for 6 months. Or if we ask you to take it down, then you need to comply, right? Those types of things. So your contract really needs to be specific about what people can do with that intellectual property, because later down the line, when you want to get into, licensing or other collaborations and partnerships where your intellectual property is, the subject or an important part of that, you want to be able to own it outright, or at least understand what your ownership dynamics are so you can use it properly in those scenarios, so you can leverage it properly, right? Because if, for example, again, wedding photos, right? If we never got that language that the wedding photos and the intellectual property belongs to us and we can use it how we please, then if we were to, for example, be featured in a magazine and they're like, oh yeah, let's see your photos, and we shared the photos or shared it online or something, and it went viral from that publication and some money was made off of it. A photographer might be like, hold up, where's our credit? Do we get a cut of this? Like, these are our photos. And me and my husband would be like, non-lawyer me in this example would be like, no, we paid for this, but if the contract doesn't state that it belongs to us, then, we may not have too much ground. So again, you want to make sure that the contract states who it belongs to and what can be done with that stuff, right? Can it be duplicated? Can it be sold, right? Can it be remixed, right? Edited, elongated? Like, what's the purpose? What is the use? What are the boundaries around that intellectual property? That's why it's important to have things in writing, in contracts, to be very specific about what people can do with what they create and what you own, right? You want to be very, very, very clear about that. And I've seen that because we don't know, right? And this is not something that we just learn in second grade and it stays with us, right? You learn this either through trial and error or doing your research or being around other business owners, right? You learn it through reading contracts and asking questions. And so when you get to that point where you are asking questions, you just want to have as much information as possible so you can either ask more questions or make sure you understand what is going on and how that impacts the people that you're working with, what they're doing for you, and the implications of that work. I'll go ahead and give you the example of the documentary that I was talking about. So someone who's close to me lives on the East Coast. They are putting together this documentary, right? This like mini documentary, and someone that they're cool with, that's that part right there, someone that they're friendly with, someone that they know well, offered to shoot the footage for free. They offered to shoot the footage for free, like, hey bro, I got you, let's go ahead and do this. I'll do the footage for free and I'll edit it and hand it over to you. It's like, cool. They shot the footage that's needed for the mini documentary, and the person ended up saying, like, they ended up delaying, number one, and then they were just like, you know what, like, it's a lot going on right now, like, I don't really have time for this project, like, I have to prioritize the paid projects, right? mm, Number one red flag, maybe number two red flag. But anyway, they couldn't do it and were ultimately like, yeah man, I'm just gonna give you the content that I put together, and you can take it to someone else in order to, like, fine tune it and cut it down. I'll just transfer you all of the footage or all of the files, right, via like Google Drive or something like that. And the person that I know was like, okay, cool, like, that's gonna work. And they were telling me about it, and I'm immediately like, did y'all have a contract? And a person's like, no, they were doing it for free. And because I care about this person, my reaction was like, I don't care. Like, do you have a contract? And this is what happens when it comes to your intellectual property, right? If you were to take this documentary and you were to go, sell it off somewhere or use it in a way that got you notoriety, or you were to make money off of it, or like big things came and whatnot, because there's no contract to, not only state that this was work done for free, right? And let me just throw that in there, that even though someone does work for free for you, or I know there's a lot of business owners who like to barter services, like, you still need a contract. You still really want to have a contract in place to define what that relationship is, even because a contract is not just about money, right? It's not just about getting paid. It's about your rights and protections and what to do when things go wrong and how to make sure that business relationship goes smoothly. So anyway, back to the example, there was no contract in place, which means there was no terms about intellectual property in place and about who owns the video footage and what can be done with it, whether it can be chopped and screwed and resold, and whether the videographer needed to get credit or could use it in any other way, right? So by default, it belongs to the videographer. And I told this person, I said, what if we get to the point where this blows up and that person has something to say about it, or they're using, let's say, what do they call it, like backstage or behind the scenes, BTS footage, like they're posting content about working with you, and mini clips that weren't featured in the documentary because they have the footage, right? They have the original footage which belongs to them, and now you're coming after them like, hey bro, take that down, like, and maybe you have no standing in that situation. Like, that could be very, very frustrating. And it's even more frustrating to find something like that out after, in this example, you've blown up or something has taken off or you've gotten a lot of notoriety from it, because now this is an issue that you have to deal with or clean up on the back end, hoping that it's something that can be cleaned up, right? So that was the example, from just a conversation that I had today that just made me want to make this post. And just, I was already going to do the live, but just really make sure that people understand the implications of the different types of business that they're getting into with people, specifically when people are doing something for them. Other examples, something else that came up was, I don't know if y'all have seen, I was going to say Spider-Man, but there's so many different versions. Anyway, where Peter Parker was like the photographer, and he was getting pictures of Spider-Man and sending it to the newspaper, and just generally, like, there was a Black Mirror episode in this recent season where there was a photographer. It was a werewolf episode if y'all watched it, but there was a photographer, getting pictures of like different celebs and whatnot and selling it to the highest bidder, basically. But the money is not just for the photo; it's for the rights to the photo as well. Those people are contractors, and they're trying to see who's going to pay the most for this specific footage, high profile, valuable footage. So that's an intellectual property consideration as well, because them paying for that footage, that few hundred or thousands or tens of thousands, whatever it is, paying for that photo or that video footage means like they're also paying for the exclusive rights to that, right? So their magazine can publish it, or their publication can be the ones who have that, right? So people can drive to their publication and purchase their publication, builds up revenue, right? Like exclusivity, like all of that has value. So when you're paying money for that photo, it's more than just the photo or the sleaziness or whatever, the attractiveness of the photo. It's the rights to that photo as well. So that person, the photographer, can't go to other news publications or companies and say, here, I got, this photo right here. And if they were to do that, right, and say, I already sold it to this person, but you can have it too for this price, that company might be like, nah, because then, it's not exclusive to us, right? And that all has to do with intellectual property rights and who owns what and what you can do with it. If you are a professional, a service provider who helps people create course content, right? Whether it's the videos, the slides, if you're someone who helps put together like curriculum or design someone's signature program, right? We're taking these ideas and we're putting them into form. If you are someone who has guests come into your group program or cohort and you're recording them speaking, right? All of these things are intellectual property. All of these things belong to someone, and you need to know who. All of these things belong to someone, and should have boundaries around how they should be used, right? So for example, if I'm if I'm being a guest speaker in someone's business program, which I do all the time, by the way. So if you're looking for someone to talk about legal business essentials in your group program cohort or your next conference, then I am your girl. Send me a DM and let's talk about it. Back to the show. If I am sitting here, presenting something, presenting about legal topics, and that person is recording, that recording that they are creating belongs to them, right? It belongs to them. And generally, people want to keep that recording and use it for their groups as other people come in over time. And if that's something that I'm okay with, then that's something that I'll sign off on. If we agree that they're going to share that recording with me and I can use it for my own purposes and sell it or do whatever, all of that comes down into the contract, right? But it does need to be specified. It needs to be specified who owns it, who can do what with it, what the boundaries are, for how long, for how much, if there's money involved. And this was another question that came up in the beta program as to, what happens when you are a guest and someone does record your presentation and it has your intellectual property in it, right? This is another thing that we hashed out. I recorded a video resource to help explain, hey Bobby, how you doing? To help explain to the person who was asking the question, like, this is how it works when you are a guest, because this person, like many others, right, wants to be a guest more and more in group programs and potentially form a collaboration, right? And so it's important to understand like what that means when you are sharing your intellectual property. Knowing what it means and the ramifications behind it could very well change your decision as to how to go about it. And these are the resources that we are piling into the legal business essentials program, is not just having like the contract, right? But here's a checklist of things that you need to look out for. Here is a resource guide about things to consider when having certain conversations. And as you go through these things and you're thinking like, yeah, this guest speaking gig is going to be great, and you're looking at this resource like, okay, I consider that, and you're talking to the person who's hosting the group and you start to get certain answers based on those questions you ask, you might think twice about working with that person or being a guest for that person. You might think twice about the extent of the signature framework that you share or the presentation that you share, or whether you're going to share any slides at all, certain questions that you might answer, right? This could change the dynamic of how you do things. And that's what's super important, because it's not just about having the contract, but it's about what the contract says, what the contract means, what the contract doesn't say, the circumstances surrounding the business relationship that you want to get into. All of these things contribute to help you make better, more informed decisions as business owners. If you look on my last post where I, talked about this, saying, the thing about ownership and intellectual property, if you look in the comments, you can see like some people are like, yep, I already got that on deck, this happened before. Like some people can tell stories from that because they know, because they've been through it, because they've experienced it, because they understand. Some people are like, yep, I got them stipulated in the contract. They go ahead and sign that, right? Because once you know, like, you can make better decisions, and you can also guide your business relationships better, not just with contractors and people who are doing things for you, but with your team, people who have access to this sensitive information, your clients, people you share this sensitive information with in full, right? All of these different business relationships, collaborations, partnerships, etc. Any questions? If you're joining me live, go ahead and drop a fire emoji. Intellectual property is one of those things that is super just nuanced and particular to each person's situation, to each business relationship, each transaction. So really just understanding at a high level what that means for your business and the intellectual property in your business, and then applying it to these different scenarios. Again, working with contractors who are creating or building things for you, working with clients who you're sharing these things with, posting these things online, or for the public to consume, partnerships, collaborations. Like, there are so many details, and it starts at understanding. Somebody made a post today. I think it was Jalen Jones, but someone made a post. And hey, girl, if you're watching, someone made a post that said something along the lines of like, the best business owners like know how to know like what questions to ask. And that's so, so critical, I think, in every area of business, but particularly legal, where these little nuances can really make or break you. We're talking about taking you from where you are now to a multi-million dollar business, if that's something you want, or not getting you there, or it taking you, 10 years versus 10 months, if you know what questions to ask, right? And if you don't know what questions to ask, because again, as business owners, we're an expert in what we do. Right. I don't expect you to know about copyright law and work for hire and, all of this out the gate, or to even learn it so you know it for yourself. But what I do expect of business owners, and I think the standard we should all hold ourselves to, is if we don't know, we need to be able to ask someone. Even if you don't know that specific question to ask, go to someone, an attorney for legal stuff, such as myself. Tell them what's going on. Do I need to look out for anything here? What do I need to be concerned about? What are the things that I need to consider if my goals are this, and that, right? You can still ask questions, and then you'll be guided with the answers that you get. And those answers will help you ask more particular questions, because you'll begin to understand what it is that it means or what applies to you. So, yes, you may not be able to, ask or know the right questions off the top of your head, but it is your responsibility to get the information that you need so that you can run your business in alignment with where you want it to be in the future. If you feel what I'm saying, please drop a fire emoji. Let me know, because we are out here playing the long game. We want our businesses to flourish and provide that, the fruit from our labor. But that labor, tongue twisting, but that labor needs to be, thorough. It needs to be quality. It needs to be adequate so that the fruit can be of nourishment. And I don't even know where I'm going with this now, but the foundation has to be proper. And that's the bottom line. The foundation has to be proper. And that includes having the knowledge and the education that you need in order to make the right decisions for your business. Hey y'all, I see you in the comments. Thank you, LinkedIn users. I don't know why it's anonymous. Shayla, Makita, thank you for tapping in. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer before I log off, but just re-emphasizing again that it is our responsibility as business owners to find the information that we need. And if you don't know where to start, you at least know the expert that you need to talk to. And for legal, that's a lawyer, a marketing professional when it comes to that, right? Like messaging, sales, emails, like all of that. You likely know someone or have someone in your network. So honestly, y'all, we don't have any excuses. If you're interested in the legal beta, the legal business essentials program, where we're currently in beta, I'm going to drop the link for the waitlist. We launch this fall, and it's going to be an exclusive silent launch for those people who want to have these types of resources, right? And so when it comes to intellectual property, this is what it looks like: is an IP transfer agreement or IP transfer clause, language that you can put into your contract, but also circumstantial resources, so you know what questions to ask of the people who are implicated in this business relationship, maybe a checklist, if you will, to double check certain things, and the ability to ask questions. What does this mean, right? What does this mean? I see this statement. What does this mean? And in legal business essentials, you won't necessarily get that one-on-one legal advice, but you'll get the information that you need in order to make an informed business decision. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that link when I get off this live, because I don't know how to do it at the same time, but it will be there. And if you do need that one-on-one legal advice, if you've been listening to this live thinking like, man, I need to double check some things in my contract, or I have some questions about this IP situation, or someone created a logo and my graphics for me, but we never did a contract or we bartered services. Like, if you have questions about, your rights when it comes to this and your intellectual property, then I'm also going to drop a link so you can book a 1 hour call with me so you can get that legal advice. It is $500, and we will hash through the questions that you have in that time so you can understand the what is needed particular to you and these circumstances or situations that came up for you during this time. Let me hear the comments a little bit. Yes, please replay, Makita. Thank y'all for joining. I know it's late for some of y'all, so I appreciate it. I'm ready to eat dinner myself. Um, yes, trademarks are critically important. I'm so glad you got a lawyer, Makita. Yes, doing it over. And that's one of the things I'm glad you're doing this now, because when we do it, I'm glad you're doing this now, because whatever your goals are, whatever that height is that you want to get to, Makita, like, you will thank yourself for it when you get there, right? And you'll probably get there faster. You'll probably get there faster because you have a lawyer that's counseling you along the way. And just in general, y'all, there's so many legal implications to all of your business decisions. Every step that you take, towards that goal where you want your business to be, there is a legal decision or aspect somewhere in there. So just having a go-to lawyer, even if you don't have them on retainer, but that you can ask questions to once a month, once a quarter, whenever you need to tap in, someone who understands and is getting familiar with your business, is critically important. Because what you don't want, and this is another thing that I'm trying to help business owners avoid with legal business essentials, right? What you don't want is to get to a certain point and have to just go back and like redo everything at a point where like your business is already on the up and up, because that might include like retracting certain things. That may include well, it'll be expensive, right? That's one thing that we don't want, but not just from a monetary standpoint, but from a time and energy standpoint. Depending on how much you have to fix, it can be super defeating, especially if there are things that you ultimately can't fix, right? So the earlier the better. I don't care what stage of business you are in. You can certainly, talk to an attorney, ask your questions. If it's day one of your business, just say, hey, it's day one, what do I need to do? If you are creating digital products and don't know how to protect yourself, hey, how do I protect myself when it comes to this course, or these digital worksheets that I'm providing, or this material I'm using as a guest coach, or whatever it is. Just ask questions. The more you know, the better you do, the better decisions you make, and the more leverage you have. So look out for those links in the comments. Number one, for the Legal Business Essentials wait list, because this fall is coming up fast and we want you to be the first ones on the list to find out what's going on. And there will be opportunities to still join the beta program. For the people who are on the wait list. It's not a public opportunity. And then number two, I'll drop a link if you want to talk about, these intellectual property implications in your business. It's a 1 hour call for $500 so you can get that legal advice that you need. With that being said, there's some pasta somewhere for me. So I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. And if you have questions, drop them in the comments or send it to me via a DM. Good night, y'all.